Well, as we are meeting here at the Conference of the Parties, the 19th one in the Climate Change Convention cycle, the world is confronted with, I think, a very unique challenge. The science of global warming, the science of climate change, has reached a point where the economics is beginning to follow it. We are beginning to see governments, finance ministries, but also corporations and their strategic planning departments. We're beginning to see them factor in climate change into their future investment decisions, into their future economic pathways, both from a mitigation transition towards a low-carbon economy potential, but also from the point of view of the costs of adaptation, the costs of not beginning to keep the world within this 2-degree target. What, however, is not happening is two things. One, governments are not able to draw together the threads and really make a global climate agreement emerge. Again, in Warsaw, we are struggling. We only have 2 years left until 2015, when that new agreement is meant to be ready. It puts a lot of uncertainty, not only in terms of the public having confidence in the ability of this process to deliver, but also into the markets, into corporate boardrooms, into the financial markets, because we are talking about investments, if we take climate change seriously, that are transformative across our economy. The way our cities will be built and managed in the future, the way mobility and transport systems will function, the way our energy matrix will emerge over the next few years. Is it going to be a low-carbon pathway, or are we just going to exploit the fossil fuel reserves that we believe we have almost in endless amounts available until we are at the 3-degree warming world, and then suddenly panic? This is where I think the discussion about financing becomes so critical. The private sector is so central, not only as a follower in the sense of exploiting market opportunities, but also in dialogue with the public and with governments and regulators. We have to begin to correct the misallocation of resources in our economies, which are happening today. We cannot agree on $100 billion that we mobilize collectively for financing the global climate action plans that we are supposed to put in place, the Green Climate Fund. At the same time, the top 200 fossil fuel companies just last year invested $680 billion in the development and exploration of new fossil fuel sources. So if that is the calibration of our economic investment path, I think we will indeed struggle with maintaining the notion that we will actually manage to have a world that stays below a 2-degree warming scenario.
As you said, there are 2 years to go for the framework to be put in place. In the interim, I think would you not agree that it's better for business themselves to actually take the reins and use their influence and power to effect change without relying on government framework?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily juxtaposition business taking the lead or the reins as opposed to public policy. I think everybody has to lead at the moment, partly to build the confidence that it's doable, secondly to show that people are capable and willing to lead and to join this global effort. But I think what you're, in a sense, referring to is also what I would describe the two parallel universes we have at the moment. The universe of action, which is, in a sense, phenomenal. We have businesses changing their business strategies, their product lines, their technologies, cities, mayors, local governments acting on climate change. 140 countries have now enacted clean energy targets. So there is a lot actually happening in the universe of action. And then the challenge of how to translate that into a global set of regulatory norms and standards, the global climate agreement, because the transition can indeed be fostered and nurtured right now in thousands of different arenas, from each corporate boardroom to how a university runs its campus, to how an agriculture ministry may factor climate change in, to how a fertilizer company or a cement company reduces its carbon footprint. So enormous amounts of opportunity to act, but we always need to recognize individual players in the marketplace will be able to act and lead up to a point, and then you hit a glass ceiling. And that is why the market and the regulatory, the policy arena, need to work almost like teeth wheels in order to allow us to make these transitions. Remember, we have actually governments committed in the industrialized world to reduce their carbon emissions from 1990 to the year 2050 by 80%. That means essentially decarbonizing our economies. It's not going to happen by individual actions alone.
Well, I mean, recently, of course, those agreements were put in place, but, Japan, for example, have, as it were, reinvented the wheel in that respect. Do you see other countries following suit, or do you think that this will actually encourage people to tighten the reins and actually act as more of a collective unit?
Well, again, I think one has to sometimes take unique cases. Japan, certainly after the tragedy of the earthquake and the tsunami, is struggling with a very unique moment in its history. I think in that sense it has a lot of empathy and understanding from the international community that it is struggling to maintain its original commitments, which were ambitious commitments. I think what may be a bit unfortunate is that the timing and the nature of the announcement seems to sort of suggest that Japan is stepping out of the global climate consensus that industrialized countries really need to act, which I think is not the intention, but it may have left some wondering. And certainly in the climate negotiations world, it is very difficult for developing countries to be asked to do more when they actually see developed nations not really meeting their targets. And let's be clear, Japan made a dampener announcement by bringing this news to the climate COP here. Canada exiting the Kyoto Protocol, the United States never joining it. The European Union not moving beyond the 20% emissions reduction target, which it is actually meeting by all accounts, but still we are talking about accelerating action, about greater ambition, and the developed world is not exactly excelling either in raising the level of ambition. So for many developing countries, the question is, we will have to act on climate change anyway, and they're showing it from South Africa to Brazil to China, Indonesia. I mean, these are countries that are leading global climate change responses at the moment, which is often lost in the reporting in the world. But they are asking themselves, what do we gain by making legally binding commitments to an international treaty which actually demands a lot of us and very little extra from others? And so this is part of this arithmetic of negotiation that is not aligning itself at the moment.